As now as Yogendra Yadav of Swaraj, Abhiyan, one of the petitioners of that PIL, also has been extensively touring the drought-hit areas of Bundelkhand. Yogendra, before I come to you, here's what industry body Assocham has said today. It's raising the red flag on the drought. In a report, Assocham says that 33 crore people across 256 districts have been severely impacted because of drought-like conditions. The report says after 2 consecutive years of drought, 10 states in India face serious challenges. It said rough estimates show that this could cost the economy a whopping $100 billion or 6.5 lakh crore rupees. Of course, those are mind-boggling numbers that have been put out by Assocham. But Yogendra, coming back to you, and I want you to respond to the comments that have been made by the Finance Minister in Parliament saying, look, the Supreme Court or the court cannot question every executive decision. The edifice of the legislative framework is being questioned by the Supreme Court on a daily basis. The Appropriations Bill has been passed. Now, where do I get money to set up a mitigation fund?
I think the Finance Minister forgot some crucial things. He forgot that the court was not saying suddenly pulling this rabbit out of their hat and saying, please create this fund. The Supreme Court is only asking the government to implement the law passed by Parliament. There is a Disaster Act of the country which says, among other things, that you have to have a national policy. It says you have to have a national disaster mitigation fund. You need a force. So the Supreme Court is not throwing a new fancy idea. Supreme Court is simply asking the government to implement a law framed by the Parliament. And number two, this is not something that the judges happen to have mentioned today in their judgment and when Mr. Jaitley has passed appropriation bill. This was thoroughly discussed during the court proceedings. Additional Solicitor General was there, and I assume that the Additional Solicitor General can speak to the court, to the Finance Minister once in a while. So I mean, all these things come up. I mean, the real thing is that what the judgment says, lack of will. That is what it is all about. I'm sure Mr. Jaitley would realize what he's talking about.
Yogendra, given what we've heard from the Finance Minister, are you at all hopeful that we're going to see any forward movement despite the fact that what the Supreme Court has said in what is its first order on this matter?
First of all, we need to realize, Shireen, that the court has not given its full orders. We have seen only part one of the order, and court has only dealt with conceptual issues, issues of procedural variety and so on. So the real substantive issues where much more money may be involved is yet to come. And probably Mr. Arun Jaitley is trying to send a message to Supreme Court, which is not a very good thing for the Finance Minister to do. I think the substantive question is still yet to come, but I assume that the Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of this country, and when they order things to be done, especially when they order the government to implement a law enacted by the Parliament, I suppose the Supreme Court can have its way. I thought that is the scheme of constitutional design in our country, unless it has changed in the last few months.
Well, we'll have to see how the government responds. But Yogendra, on some of the specific issues that the court has talked about, the Supreme Court telling the government that rules for time-bound drought declaration must be put in place. There must be a unique or a uniform criteria as far as drought declaration is concerned. But this comes back again to issues and state governments, because state governments, as the court in its order itself has said, have an ostrich-like attitude where there is complete denial or the inability to acknowledge the fact that things are in a drought-like situation in the state. So do you believe that now the pressure has got to be put on state governments to ensure timely acknowledgement?
Indeed, the court uses a very strong language for the 3 state governments of Bihar, Gujarat and Haryana, and uses words like ostrich-like attitude and such like. But it also moves forward. I think we've not sufficiently yet noticed some of the nuances of the judgment. What the judgment really is saying is this, that yes, states are responsible, but in the last instance, the buck stops at the center. This is the word they use. The buck stops with the government of India, the union government, that it should take more proactive role even in declaration of drought, that it should be generous with finances in things of this kind. They have also said that drought is part of disaster, so which has a very serious legal implications. And what the court has done today is to lay out a new framework which does not see citizens only as subjects but as right-bearing individuals, as a country where you do not go by archaic methods of anavari and all those practices, where you go for modern techniques, you go for remote sensing, you go for various other ways of bringing it together. And the Supreme Court says, please formulate uniform standards. Now, interestingly, once again, the Supreme Court is merely asking the government to implement its own manual for disaster management. They are only asking the government to implement what its own statutorily binding guidelines already say. It is sad that the court has to say these things to the government to implement what the government should have been doing anyway, and all this is statutory, it's already in place. So the court is not coming up with any fanciful solution for things that they don't know very much about. At least in this case, the court, and being very, very conscious, is not requesting courts to do things which the court ought not to do. This is merely implementing what the policies, guidelines, statutory things already say. And if that is infringement, then we don't know what should courts be doing in this country.
So Yogendra, before we let you go now, as you pointed out that this is the first set of observations on a conceptual level that have been made by the Supreme Court in this matter today, what can we expect now, and what is the timeline that we're working with?
The court said today in the open court that the next part of the judgment should come tomorrow or the day after, more likely the day after. So they really want to wrap it up before the court vacations begin this weekend. And the issues that are to be settled is about Manrega, how the funds allocation should take place, about PDS, whether it should be universalized in the drought-affected areas, about crop loss compensation, how the amount should be determined, about loan restructuring for agriculture on the lines of what has happened to corporate sectors, and about cattle relief for cattle. These are the most substantive issues that are yet to come. The court has simply at the moment created a framework, and everyone is looking forward, so am I, to the judgment on the substantive prayers that we had made.
All right, Yogendra, we'll have you back again tomorrow and day after to discuss what the court does have to say on this matter. But thank you, as always, for joining us here on India Business Hour.